Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm taking you to the Sunshine Cup, where I'm looking to get some revenge on TOUCANNON. If you watched yesterday's video, you'll know that I had a pretty tough time against TOUCANNON. I was running ABA weak to flying, and TOUCANNON was my nemesis all day long. So today, I'll be knocking TOUCANNONs out of the sky with my double anti-flying backline of Shadow Piloswine and Smackdown Colossal. Now this is a team for fun, this is not a team that's recommended for climbing, but I had an absolute blast getting to shred some TOUCANNONs with the newly buffed Piloswine. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1 we're off to a very strong start, leading Furret into Drampa. Now my Furret is not running the typical moveset of Swift and Trailblaze, instead I'm opting for Brick Break. Brick Break does give me super effective damage into Pokemon like Drampa. Drampa has quite a bit of attack, but it does not have a lot of bulk, meaning Brick Break will hit for devastating damage and set up a perfect farm down for Furret. My opponent sends in TOUCANNON, and our target has been acquired. Immediate pivot into the Piloswine, they fire off the Drill Peck but lose half their HP along the way. They now reveal their final Pokemon is a Piloswine, and I should be now in a completely winning position. Icicle Spear does get shielded, Piloswine making it to Icicle Spear number 2, and now my opponent has to decide, are they willing to give up the final shield? No, they're saving shields for TOUCANNON, but TOUCANNON's about to meet a brick wall in the back in Colossal. Icicle Spear will take the knockout. At this point, I can send in Colossal and win, but I'm going to send in Furret just to delay the inevitable just a little bit longer. Icicle Spear is going to be undercharged, in comes Colossal, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. Hopping into the next match, picking up a Nightmare lead Furret into Shadow Blaziken. Now my team is triple weak to Shadow Blaziken, so this is a pretty big problem. However, I have a plan for how to deal with Blaziken. I know that Blaziken has incredible damage output, but it is very, very frail. So instead of going for the Swift, I'm going to go for Brick Break to look to ramp up my Sucker Punch damage. My goal here is to play the 2 shield. I'm going to lose the 2 shield, but then I can smack down with Colossal, and usually Colossal is strong into what they have in the back. My opponent makes a nice catch of Brick Break onto Dartrix, but unfortunately for my opponent, this Dartrix is about to get torn to smithereens by Colossal. In comes Colossal. Unfortunately, Colossal is going to force them into throwing Seed Bombs, and Seed Bomb just does not do a lot of damage to this bulky beast. Colossal, more than happy to absorb Seed Bomb after Seed Bomb and look for a full farm down. Dartrix would love to switch out, but the switch timer does not come up, and they get fully farmed down. In comes Piloswine, opponent makes a very nice peekaboo catch as they catch the Flame Charge onto Blaziken. Unfortunately, Blaziken's just going to get fully farmed down, and now they send back in the Piloswine. Piloswine cannot afford to let this boosted Rock Slide through, it would just put them way too low. They should look to do 4 in the move, so I'm going to do 2, switch into the Piloswine, and get a catch and a sneak. My opponent full sent the high horsepower, that's devastating damage, but luckily for me, they cannot farm down after. They're forced to fire off the Icicle Spear, and now I can just win the game with Furret. As Furret does have a Swift loaded, Swift into the Piloswine is just going to do too much damage. Furret gets the farm down, and despite a very bad lead, we're able to get the win. Our target has been acquired once again in the next match, leading Furret into TOUCANNON. I safe switch in a Piloswine, they stay in to fire off a Drill Peck, but in doing so they've lost half their health bar. They're now going to be sending out Furret, and Furret is really behind on energy. Furret's CMP ties Swift to the back-to-back Icicle Spears, but my opponent's really not going to like the fact that Swift does not knock out here. I do have the Shadow Piloswine, so I do take quite a bit more damage than a regular Piloswine, but it turns out I have pretty good stats on this Piloswine, so I'm able to hang on and win switch advantage. My opponent sends in their own Piloswine, and switch advantage was everything in this game. Farming up with the Furret, opponent tries for a catch onto TOUCANNON. I get to bank a ton of energy on the Furret and then catch onto Colossal. Colossal, more than happy to absorb that Drill Peck. That does absolutely nothing. Colossal gets the farm down, and my opponent is left with Piloswine versus the world. I'm going to no shield here. They full send high horsepower, down goes Colossal, but I should be able to take the win with a Brick Break into double Swift. Brick Break will debuff their defense. My opponent no shields trying to call a Swift bait, but unfortunately, it's just not to be, as Furret will be able to put up the shield, fully Sucker Punch down, and we're going to take that win, another TOUCANNON defeated. Hopping into the next match, leading Furret into Macargo. This is a matchup where having Brick Break is very helpful, but the 0 shield as Furret is always a little bit awkward, because if your opponent Rock Tombs and you shield, it puts you very far behind, but if you no shield and they overheat, then you just get KO'd. I don't want to shield the Rock Tomb, so I end up no shielding, and they full send the Overheat, and I get KO'd. In comes Colossal, my opponent save switches into a Bullet Seed Credilli, and I respond pretty slowly with the Shadow Piloswine. Ideally, responding a lot faster would put me in a better spot. My opponent does end up going for the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb would only hit for neutral damage, but of course is going to reduce my damage output. Icicle Spear lands, that still KOs even when debuffed, and back in comes Magcargo. Magcargo is low enough that even a resistant Icicle Spear will have to be shielded. Switch Clock not up quite yet. There it is, in comes Colossal, they send in Fearow, and unfortunately Fearow is getting fully farmed down. Colossal from full HP can survive a Drill Run. Drill Run will not take the knockout, but since I have a shield, I may as well shield. Because I know they just can't do enough damage with Rock Tomb on Magcargo. My opponent goes for the Bad Manners double resisted Overheat, and that's a good game. Hopping into the next match, leading Furret into a non-Shadow Quagsire. Quagsires on this cup will almost always be on Water Gun. Ideally, the Shadow is typically going to be preferred, just because you get so much extra Water Gun damage. In this matchup, the fact that they're non-Shadow means I tank the Aqua Tail very comfortably, and they're going to be immediately pivoting out and sending in Credilli. But I don't have Trailblaze, I have Brick Break. I fire off the Brick Break, applying a debuff, and that's going to set up a monster farm down for the Piloswine. My opponent full sends the Grass Knot. That's such a big shield, because now all this energy is going to be at full power. It's not debuffed. And unfortunately for them, their Quagsire is going to be taking huge damage here. Back in comes the Quagsire. Water Guns will start to add up very quickly. Icicle Spear is going to connect. Just like that, they're already deep into the red health. Another Icicle Spear launched by the Piloswine. Piloswine is just such a menace in this meta. My opponent puts up the shield. I thought about catching, but I did not switch in time. I was mid Powder Snow, and I just let it go and send in Colossal. In the back is Fearow, and now it's time to show what I mentioned earlier. Colossal does not get KO'd by Drill Run if you're high rank. I know Shield Drill Run rocks Colossal, but look at this. We get the farm down on 1 HP, farm down the Quagsire, and that is a good game. Hopping into the next match, we've got a perfect mirror lead, Furret versus Furret. Considering I have the Piloswine in the back, definitely not too upset at seeing Furret on the lead. Brick Break will allow me to hit for big super effective damage in this matchup. My opponent doesn't throw right away, so they may be running Trailblaze. They end up going for the Swift, no Brick Break coming out from them, and they will fire off the last second Swift. I have a very high rank Furret, so I believe I can barely hang on here. I bank the move, in comes Piloswine, and out comes a Shadow Typhlosion. This is pretty bad, but Piloswine is able to make the Stone Edge. Stone Edge will force the shield advantage. Unfortunately, I survived that on 1 HP, giving them a 4th Incinerate, but now I can send in Colossal. Colossal has a double resist to Blast Burn. They're forced to go for Thunder Punch, and Thunder Punch just does not hit that hard. Typhlosion just gonna undertap the Thunder Punch. I no-shield this one as well, and my opponent reveals their final Pokemon is Dunsparce. This is going to be a very difficult game for me to win. My only chance to win this game will involve grabbing their final shield with a Rock Slide and then going for a combo play with Swift. But unfortunately, my opponent already has back-to-back Drill Runs loaded, which means they're going to win Charge Stack priority, and now their switch timer's up. It all comes down to this, a 50-50. Will they predict the Snipe, or will they stay on the field? I think they're going to stay on the field. So I go for the Snipe, and they get the catch onto their own Furret. A great read by my opponent, and unfortunately, there goes our one remaining hope of winning this game. Dunsparce gets the farm down, back in comes Colossal. Colossal just does not have the damage output needed. Dunsparce makes the Drill Run, and unfortunately, we will lose that game. Hopping into the next match, we lead Furret into a Credilli, and this is a very good matchup for Furret. I have Brick Break, which does allow me to very cleanly win the Zero Shields here. I overfarm, pretending like I have Trailblaze, but they're going to find out momentarily that I'm hitting for some pretty nice super effective damage. My opponent will be able to apply a debuff here as they fire off the Rock Tomb. I'm still going to be hitting for normal damage into the Credilli due to the Brick Break, but the moment I knock them out, my attack stat is still going to be at -1. So I fire off Brick Break. Brick Break is going to be no-shielded, down goes Credilli, and out comes Water Gun Quag. This is a massive problem for my backline. My backline is so incredibly weak. I fire off the Swift. The Swift obviously had been debuffed, so my opponent no shields, and now I send in Piloswine. Piloswine is my only hope of getting through the Quagsire. If I can't get rid of the Quagsire, or at the very least get it low, I have no chance of winning this game. So I fire off Icicle Spear, confident they're going to be putting up the shield because they're very close to a charge stack, and they throw it here. I'm going to have to save the shield for Colossal. I need it to be Toucannon in the back. In comes Colossal. In the back is a Shadow Smackdown Ursaluna. Look at the spice. And unfortunately, my opponent resists Smackdown, and I'm taking super effective. So this game is just a loss. Unless I have a coupon that gives me a free Brick Break, which I do not, I can't win the game. What spice from my opponent. Now I gotta want to try Shadow Smackdown Ursaluna, and I will resign the match. We see not a Toucannon in the next match, but a Fearow on the lead. I safe switch into Piloswine, and my opponent responds with their own Furret. Shadow Piloswine is just an absolutely unbelievably strong safe swap. With the buff to Powder Snow, the buff to Icicle Spear, Piloswine is just an absolute terror. My opponent fires off the Brick Break, but that just allows Piloswine to fully farm down, winning switch advantage, and thank goodness I did because they have a Marowak in the back. I haven't really seen any Marowaks in this cup, so I forgot it was legal to be honest, but I'm very happy to have won switch so that way Colossal gets to avoid that catastrophic damage. Marowak does have a ton of loaded energy. They're one off the back-to-back Bone Clubs. My opponent waits the turn and gets a nice catch onto Fearow. Very nicely done from them. Swift is going to land. Swift does get them pretty low, but two can play at that game. I'm going to be catching their Drill Peck onto Colossal. The bad news for me, however, is my opponent is now going to get a huge farm down on Marowak. Marowak is going to absolutely mudslap me to smithereens, but I will make a Rock Slide, and that will force my opponent's final shield. The game will all come down to this. Am I 1 off or 2 off? If I'm 1 off, I win the game, and I'm 1 off on the Furret, because Furret wins charge attack priority over Marowak. They have the back-to-back Bone Clubs, but they'll never get the chance. We had farmed up just enough energy before we caught. Swift KOs the Marowak, and somehow, despite a great catch from my opponent, we're able to survive. We get a blast from the past in the next match, Furret into Shadow Pidgeot. Pidgeot, there's a Pokemon I haven't seen in quite some time. My opponent sends out a Gastrodon, but I don't think this is an amazing response to Piloswine. My opponent also throws on alignment there, which does help me out, because I will take whatever extra Powder Snow damage that I can get. Not only that, but the free Powder Snow is going to help me get to 3 Icicle Spears, which is what I'm going to need to actually land a move in this matchup. Icicle Spear is going to be shielded. Gastrodon farming up. They throw on alignment once again. Opponent handing out free Powder Snows like it's Halloween, and I'm going to make it to 1 final Icicle Spear. I believe I've done enough Powder Snow damage that this will actually just take the knockout. Down goes Gastrodon, and we're able to win switch advantage. My opponent sends in Drampa as their final Pokemon, and this game is over. In comes Furret. Furret trying to make it to the Brick Break. They switch into Pidgeot just to meet a brick wall in Colossal. Colossal is just a wall to anything they can throw. It doesn't matter what moves they have. They're on Feather Dance on the Pidgeot. Trainer, that is not going to save you. Colossal gets the full farm down. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Furret into Fearow in the next match. This is not a great lead for Furret, so we'll safe switch into Piloswine. Fearow stays in, and in doing so, they lose a ton of their health bar. They will get a shield advantage, however. So they get the shield advantage, and now in comes Piloswine. I'm farming up to the back-to-back. I lose charge attack priority, but they're a non-shadow Piloswine, so I should tank this. So I no shield. I get KO'd! Oh my goodness, what a catastrophic error. Oh, that is absolutely terrible. I expected that I would survive the Icicle Spear, but man, with the Icicle Spear buff, it just hits so much harder that even from a non-shadow, that KO'd. I just lost back-to-back Icicle Spears. What a gigantic misplay from me. And with that, I've probably lost this game. That energy would have been so helpful. But now it's Colossal versus the world, and in the back, they have Furret. Even if they don't have Brick Break, this game is just over because Colossal, it doesn't have amazing neutral matchups across the board. It does overall sim better in this cup with Smackdown instead of Fire Spin, but I think either way, it just ends up feeling pretty inflexible. It did what I needed it to do, which was basically hard counter Toucannon, but outside of that, I really felt like it didn't do a lot for me. Here my opponent brings back in the Fearow, and unfortunately, even though they won't get to a Drill Run, I'm so low that Drill Peck should just about take the knockout. So I fire off the Flame Charge, boosting up my attack one final time. I do survive that Drill Peck, but unfortunately I get Powder Snow down by the Piloswine, and we lose the game. Hopping into the final match, needing a bit of redemption after throwing away 2 Icicle Spears last game, and we see a familiar lead, Furret into Macargo. Last time I no-shielded, and it didn't end up going great for me as I just got KO'd by an Overheat. But this time my opponent ends up firing off their charge attack on alignment, and it ends up being a Rock Tomb. That's okay by me. In comes Fearow, and I get to respond with the Piloswine. Piloswine, gonna have to shield up drill packs. I can survive it, but it would just do catastrophic damage. I debated sending in Colossal, but I'm thinking that this could potentially be a double flyer team. And if there's Toucannon in the back, then I want Toucannon to get walled off by Colossal. My opponent puts up a shield, which honestly surprised me quite a bit, because now I get a full farm down and I exit with a ton of residual energy. Whereas had they not shielded, then I wouldn't have had nearly as much residual. I switch into Furret, and my opponent reveals their final Pokemon is Bullet Seed Credilli. And this is where Bullet Seed is betraying my opponent because they just don't have the farm down needed. I'm able to make it to a second Brick Break. Brick Break gets the shield, and disaster for my opponent. They thought the Bullet Seed KO'd. They were trying to CMP to the Piloswine, but the Piloswine was not on the field yet. Bullet Seed is so bad that it didn't get the farm down, and that is going to cost them, as I just get to farm down Macargo. To be fair, Credilli loses charge type priority to Piloswine, so even if they hadn't made that misplay, Piloswine still wins that by 15, but it was just kind of a humorous end to my sets there, as my opponent thought they had Bullet Seeded down, but Bullet Seed is just, it's a really underwhelming move anytime you need damage, and we're able to take that win. One anecdote before we get into the summary for this video. I do think that Bullet Seed on Credilli is probably actually the better play for this meta, just because Water Gun Quagsire is basically the best mon in the entire format, and Credilli, if it doesn't have Bullet Seed, actually does struggle in that matchup. So even though Bullet Seed damage is really underwhelming, it does make Credilli's matchup a lot more convincing there, so I do think there is a pretty convincing argument to be made for Bullet Seed Credilli in this meta. But it is pretty funny anytime you have to try and farm something down neutrally with Bullet Seeds, just how little damage that move does. Alright, now some final thoughts on the team and on my Venge quest to hunt down Toucannon. Overall, I feel like the Venge quest went pretty well. This team, it was okay. I went 14 and 11 across the sets that I played with the team on stream, so a whole lot of 3-2 sets and then a 2-3 to end it. So overall positive day, and many Toucannons were destroyed, whether it was by the Colossal or whether it was by the Shadow Piloswine. What I can confidently say is after this video, I'm back to being a fan of Toucannon. Since Toucannon got Beak Blast, I was a pretty big fan of it, but man, yesterday's video, those battles, Toucannon was my sleep paralysis demon. I could not escape that bird, so to get a little bit of revenge in this video did feel quite nice. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. Thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.